Hello and welcome to the Reform Gamers, episode 211 of the show all about theology, video games, and playing games that would probably have your pastor stare at you funny and be like, what are you doing with your life? I'm your host, Logan, and joining me, as you can see if you're watching the video version, is Josh from the Backlog Breakdown podcast and Wesley from the Henshin Dad podcast. Guys, I know this is awkward because I'm just kind of throwing it to both at the same time, but feel free to say hi in no specific order or ranking.
Hi.
I didn't realize
I got in there first.
Josh got it really fast. Yeah. We've moved up a little. Okay.
Pardon the mess in the background. This is my kid's bedroom.
Was that better?
No worries, man. But yeah, y'all, welcome back to the show. It's been a hot minute, but I'm excited to have y'all on to discuss Shin Megami Tensei 5, a game that I honestly thought I was not going to play for reasons that when you look at the game and what it's about, you're like, I don't know if I should play that. But after having played the game, I'm like, you know what? We need to discuss this game because if everybody else is going to talk about it and they're not going to do it from a biblical worldview, then we're going to do it at least. And we're just going to cover it. So yeah, hopefully that interests you. If you're listening to this episode, I would think that would interest you. We're going to talk about that a little bit later on in the episode proper. If I make it through without coughing, I swear I took a cough drop and it's not doing anything for me. But with that being said, though, y'all, welcome to the podcast. Welcome back to the podcast to you two. And real quick, if you guys would, maybe this is someone's like first episode and they're like, hey, who's Josh? Who's Wes? Josh, kind of let people know who you are, what the Backlog Breakdown's about, and then Wes, it'll go to you to talk about your Henshin Dad podcast and kind of what you do.
Awesome. So, I'm one of the co-hosts of the Backlog Breakdown, where we talk about our backlogs and encourage each other to beat them down. We really try and talk about video games and stewardship, using the recreation as a gift, gift that it is, and not overindulging like we often are tempted to do. Backlog Breakdown.
Right on. Wes.
Right. So I'm Wes. I used to be the host of the Henshin Dad podcast, and now I just kind of infiltrate everybody else's podcast because,
it's not around anymore?
It is. It exists, and I have ideas, but, you have ideas in one hand and ambition in the other, and then you have laziness in the other. I guess I have three hands now. I'm not really sure how that works.
Yeah, it's really the tacos that are weighing you down. It's like all that.
Oh, we can get a lot of good tacos here in the Pacific Northwest, definitely. But yeah, I do host the Henshin Dad podcast. It talks about tokusatsu, which is a genre of like TV and film in Japan. It's like Godzilla, Ultraman, which I talk about way too much, Kamen Rider, Power Rangers, Super Sentai, all that good stuff. Hopefully I'll get back to it someday when I'm, not like filling all my free time with, rabbit genocide and all that. But, that's neither here nor there. Please don't look into that any further than you should.
That is a deep cut. So if you're a patron, did we save that for the patrons or did we leave that before the patron uncut stuff?
You can ask me though. You can always send me a message.
That's true.
And I will regale you with animal stories of like Watership Down quality.
Yep. So yeah, there you go. Dear listeners, if you want the uncut stuff and hear all the funny stories and slightly terrifying stories, you can support us over on Patreon, patreon.com/thereformgamers. The link will be in your show notes. So yeah, before we get into this episode, want to make note of a few things real quick. First of all, links to pretty much everything that we talk about on this episode, including links to Josh's podcast, links to Wesley's podcast, and episodes of Wes where he's on other podcasts will most likely be in your show notes. I say most likely just so I give myself a little bit of grace in case I forget to do that, which happens a lot because I'm old and I forget things. And
like School of Rock being 20 years old. Yeah.
Like, oh gosh, dude, when you told me, so this is a bit going into the pre-show stuff. We talked a little bit about School of Rock because me and Wes kind of went down the rabbit hole of talking about just different school things and how our kids act. And we realized that School of Rock came out nearly 20 years ago. And I'm like, oh man, I am old as dirt. And so it's one of the great things about teaching. It makes you feel, really just kind of keeps you humble is what I'll say. It keeps you humble.
Great way to put it.
It reminds you that you, that the days and hours are fleeting, and so you just got to make the best use of time with that. I think there's a Bible verse somewhere that talks about that. But yeah, so getting into the show proper, a little bit of housekeeping. I'm going to change up housekeeping for really the future, the foreseeable future of the podcast, where because we record these so early or at different times in the month, it's hard for me to really tell you what's new on YouTube and the website. So think of housekeeping now going to be like secret links of the episode, kind of like what Philly D did back on YouTube, where he has like the secret links of the day in his videos. There's secret links with the videos, or not the videos. Well, it is a video if you watch this on YouTube, but secret links is what housekeeping is now going to be. So check your app, your podcast app, your YouTube description box to see what kind of secret links we have down there of goodies and fun stuff. And I promise I won't abuse that to rickroll people. Or I might actually. I don't know. Excuse me. I got to put another cough drop in just for this episode. So with that being said, be sure to check your app. Be sure to check the description box for if you're watching this on YouTube for the secret links, and enjoy. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into the show itself. So a little bit of what have we been playing? Josh, what's something you've been playing, man? I'm seeing I'll let you go, man. This is just
it's like size 7 font there. Come on.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. I think if I zoom in a little bit, I can probably see it. Got to use the Hubble telescope, but I got it.
Yeah, so I have been playing Pokemon with my kids. I have 3 young ones. The oldest is 6 years old, and they've never really cared for video games very much. It's just like dad's thing to them. But recently, within the past few months, my oldest has started an interest in video games. It started with the Mario Kart on the mobile game of all things. And now there's a few things that he enjoys, one of which is Pokemon. So I fired up on the Switch. There's a new Pokemon game out and everyone's enjoying it. I'm playing Pokemon Sword.
Yes.
And so we're having fun with that one. I never actually finished it. It's funny. We were playing it just this past weekend. And it like keeps a log of different things that happen in the game. And I was looking back on that, and like we started the file in May of 2020. So 2 years ago.
Wow.
And I'm just like, oh man. And it's like a total of like 20 hours of in-game time. So like, I'm not even super far into it. We take our time. We're just trying to catch a lot of Pokemon mainly. Right. But he's gotten really excited and like, let's do the next gym challenge kind of a thing. So I think we have like 6 badges, something.
Oh, so, right on.
Yeah, we're having fun with that. It's really cool as the kids get older, like start bringing them into the fold and playing some video games as well. So Pokemon Sword with the kids. The game that I have been playing most often is a game that you should not play around kids. It's called A Plague Tale: Innocence. And it's kind of it's one of those like narrative games where it's not really about the mechanics of the game. You're constantly like being not interrupted with narrative stuff, but it's like usually when I play video games, I'll turn on a podcast or turn on YouTube on a tablet or something like that. And with this game, it's a fool's errand because like every few minutes I have to pause it because someone's talking, something else is happening.
Yeah,
it's sort of like I would compare it to something like Uncharted, except that it's not an action game. It's got like stealth elements. It's kind of like a dark fantasy. Or not even that makes it sound like Game of Thrones or something. It's more like a Grimm's fairy tale. It's like a dark fairy tale is what it is. So there's some heavy elements. There's some language and stuff. It gets kind of gory at times. And so that's why, don't want to play it around the kids. So I'm almost done with it. I'm towards the end of the game. I'm enjoying it. There's some things about it that I'm like, this is kind of weird. The stealth mechanics are very simple, and so a lot of like the guards, the people looking out for you in the character are just really dumb, just really stupid. And so it's kind of simple what you have to do, but it's more of just like environmental puzzles than true stealth. And I'm really intrigued by the story. I'm enjoying it. It's pulling me along, so I'm having fun with that one.
Yeah, that's one that's been in my my library, right? Stay on theme with what I'm doing over on YouTube. That's one that's been in my library for a while, and I've been meaning to get to it. So if I was bad at Splinter Cell, that is like what the game is centered around, just doing all stealth, just being a stealthy boy, and I was bad at it. I would be totally okay playing this game. Like the stealth parts are not going to be really a problem for me.
Right. Have you played the first Metal Gear Solid?
Yeah.
It's way easier than that.
Oh, perfect.
So like you don't because like Metal Gear Solid has like the cones of vision and stuff like that.
Right.
There's not that in this game, but it's literally like if the guard is turned around, you can crouch and sneak by and be like 3 feet away, so long as you're behind him.
Oh,
they don't even like they can't tell at all.
That works.
Those are some terrible guards.
Yeah. Well, and it's like, and you're like sneaking around inside a wooden like cabin. And so me as a dad, I'm like, there is no way you can walk in that without making any noise. Like, I have woken up my kids for so much less than that. So yeah. Anyway, it's kind of funny because the whole narrative thing is pretty serious, but then it's like, oh, everyone's an idiot. Anyways,
it sounds like kind of how Monty Python would be. There's like moments where it's serious, and then it just kind of nosedives into just hilarity. It's like, okay.
See, I was thinking it was more like Twilight, trying to be dark and serious, but everyone's an idiot. That sounds perfect.
Okay, you know what? That's a more apt comparison.
Oh, that was good.
That's funny. I like that. Well, Wes, what have you been up to, man? What have you been playing?
All right. So, other than catching all 3 different variations of a certain virus that may or may not be going around and being basically, bedridden for like the last month, it feels like, I have also been playing Pokemon. But I've been playing the new one, Pokemon Legends, and I'm going to say this is going to be controversial. Pokemon Legends, Arceus, not Arceus, not Arceus. It is Arceus. Arceus. Even the Japanese pronounces it Arceus. So I'm going to say that. I'm going to die on this hill. Wait, I will not hear anything else.
Wait. But Japan doesn't have a character for C, right? Isn't it just she?
Well, it's Arceus. As far as I can tell.
Okay. Okay, gotcha.
So
okay,
I'm going to say
bad.
Arceus.
I've been
Yes. Okay. Sorry.
I've been saying this game wrong.
No,
for probably a month now. I thought it was Pokemon Legends, like Arceus or Arceus, yes. But I just realized the C comes after the R.
Exactly, and then the E comes right after the C. Man. So everything that's taught me about like spelling and everything and proper pronunciation.
I thought it was a God of War crossover. Pokemon Atreus.
Kratos shows up and just rips a Pokemon. I'm sorry, need to give this PG-13.
Well, it's funny you say that because I do feel like Pokemon Legends Arceus is a little bit more veering towards that, maybe not necessarily like R rating or anything like that, but it's serious. Like there's some like actual serious stuff going on in there, and I've been pretty impressed with the storytelling so far, honestly.
Wow.
And it's hard to really describe the game, but it's going to be minor spoilers, but this is like the first like 10 seconds of the game, but it's basically Breath of the Wild meets like an isekai anime, but plays kind of like Shin Megami Tensei 5. So I'm just kind of like, okay, that works. So if you know anything about isekais, if you've seen anime before, and hopefully not trash anime, but I'm really enjoying it. I also have 3 kids, and they are all very firmly in the Pokemon stage right now, except for the little guy.
Nice.
The older 2, like my oldest right now, is out there watching like the original Pokemon DVD box set that I have, and he's just loving it. That's awesome. He is like into it so much. So we've actually just been playing this, and they've been telling me like, oh, get that Pokemon over there, and and oh, we got to go over to that mountain over there. And I'm like, I've just been really impressed with it. Like I did not expect a lot from this game because Pokemon has kind of let me down the last couple of years, just a wee bit. Sure. But this is something completely different. And honestly, if they just stick with this like as a spin-off for various regions that they have, and they could do this for all sorts of different regions that are in different Pokemon games. Like I could see this working as like a Pokemon Gold and Silver prequel in some ways. They really could do a lot of good stuff with this. So if they could just stick with this formula, like they got something amazing. Like I've never been this impressed with Pokemon before, to be perfectly honest. It's completely blown me out of the water. And I spent last year playing like 6 or 7 different Pokemon games, just going back through and playing the versions that I didn't play before. So I'm really fresh on Pokemon right now. And
man,
I can't say enough good things about this game. Like the graphics obviously aren't like Breath of the Wild quality. Sure. There's some jank going on there, but honestly, like it's like such a breath of fresh air. This is so fun, and it's just what I needed right now because I can play it while I'm like sick in bed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So would you say this is kind of like what the Pokemon franchise needed to kind of, I guess, maintain or kind of boost its longevity a little bit?
Oh, for sure, yeah. And they better be putting these out like every other year instead of like trying to come up with brand new mainline entries. I could see this because that's
Yeah.
what they tried to do. They tried to come up with their like remakes or their mainline entries like every other year.
Right.
So if they could start going into like more of a 3-year cycle where you have like a remake and then a mainline game
Yeah.
and then a spin-off game like this, I think that would not only help the quality of all Pokemon, but that would certainly like offer them a lot more storytelling opportunities. And this actually has a
Yeah.
story. Like Pokemon doesn't usually have like good stories, but this is a good story. I'm really enjoying it so far. And the review
Nice.
scores obviously are like holding firm on that too. Like this game is getting
they're
like
doing pretty
9s and
good.
10s across the board. Maybe a couple 8s here and there, but that's just cranky people.
Sure.
So, you don't have to listen to them. They probably pronounce it Arceus. So I don't take their
Yeah.
opinion with anything.
They're
except
like
a
me
grain of
over
salt.
here. Which reminds me,
Nice.
what number did Tyler give this game on the TRG website?
There might be a
No.
counter review coming in the future if I hadn't read it yet. So
No,
How
it was
many-
a pretty.
How many Pokemon are in the game?
as far as I can
I'm
tell,
just
there's a
curious, is
little
it like-
less than like 300, but I think that's actually like
okay.
a pretty good amount since there's like
Yeah.
nearly
Yeah.
1,000 at this point. And a lot of
Right.
people are
Yeah.
like, "Oh, I want the entire Pokedex." Well, you don't really want the entire Pokedex in this game because you actually, the way it works is that when you catch Pokemon, you're filling out, you're in the past, so you're filling out the Pokedex for the first time. So you're going to
Right.
have to go ahead and catch Pokemon many times over, and you actually have to go see them and battle them in different ways. So it'll actually record like,
Huh.
oh, you've seen this Pokemon use Quick Attack 5 different times, or you've used this type of
Oh.
poison attack against this Pokemon, and it'll log all those entries in. So you're catching Pokemon like left and right, like
Wow.
basically like Pokemon Go, in that you have to constantly get a new batch of them in. Pretty much like SMT V as well, where you have to get brand new demons for your fusion stock. Basically the same
Nice.
idea right here. So
Gotcha.
Fair enough. That's cool. I wish I hadn't listened to you talk about it and then listened to people on Twitter talk about it, because I've almost pulled the trigger and picking this game up a couple times. I'm like, it's like, don't do it, man. You're in February. Elden Ring, Horizon, Sifu,
Oh,
Dying
yeah.
Light. Don't add another one. But yeah,
Yeah.
which, speaking of those, actually brings me to what I've been playing. I've been playing Dying Light 2 and Sifu, and one of them, I'm like, this is pretty dope. The other one, I'm like, this ain't hooking me like I thought it would. And unfortunately, the one that's not hooking me like I thought it would is Dying Light 2. And the first one was really good. The first one was stupid good. Like, it just came out of left field. It was, you got parkour, you got zombies, you got this day-night mechanic where at nighttime you have the more scary zombies coming out, and some can like fly and leap really high and run really fast. It's like, okay, this is really cool. This is a good take on the zombie genre. And this one is more of the same, which isn't really bad, but I don't really understand the point of it. Like, I don't understand the point of my character. I don't understand the point of these different factions and why I'm trying to help them out. The only thing I can really know for sure, the only thing I know for sure is that the main character just wants to find his sister who they got separated at some point. I'm like, okay, I understand that motivation. But why am I helping out this group of people? Why am I supposed to help out this other group of people? I don't really get it. And so it's just kind of, maybe I missed something somewhere and I zoned out during one of the dialogue things, which is very possible. But all that to say, I don't think people who want to play this game are coming to it for the story. They're coming to it for the zombies and the action and the parkour, which all of
Fair
which
enough.
are pretty awesome, because the parkour is super smooth. Like, this is kind of what I wish Assassin's Creed would have felt like, because it's so smooth and fluid that it just works so well. Like, I've put probably, at this point of the recording, around 5 or 6 hours into the game, and all I've really done is just kind of run around the city and explored and just jumped around and yelled out parkour whenever I jump across a building.
Parkour.
Yeah, and it's a blast. Like, I'm having fun with it, and it's super cool. But yeah, I think I've just kind of switched my brain into like, I switched my brain from the mindset of like, oh yeah, it's gonna be a dope story, to the story is gonna take a backseat. I'm just gonna run around and jump on cars and do flips and hit zombies with a steel pipe, that sort of thing. Because I think that's really what the game's all about. It's just zombies, parkour, and weapons. But
now hold on.
yeah.
Do the zombies do parkour?
So the ones at night do.
That's
like
scary.
there's some that'll straight up.
That's
It
frightening.
is scary. There's some that'll like bound over vehicles and obstacles, will leap up buildings. There's some that are like they have these like big brute ones that come in now that'll break walls down and just tear
Ugh.
through obstacles to get to
Jeez.
you. There's one that I'm pretty sure it's not really flying, but I'm pretty sure it glides after you. And so I'm like,
Okay. Like
okay,
a
these
squirrel.
yeah, like a squirrel, like a rotting squirrel. But yeah. So I mean, it's got all these really cool things going for it. It's just like still at the same time, I'm like, this is just not grabbing me like I thought it would. And so I don't know if it's just like the mood I'm in, because I kind of would just rather play the Trails of not Cold Steel, Trails in the Sky game, the second one, or what. But I'm just not really digging it. And so I'm just gonna kind of leave my review or saying anything definitive about it at that, and just say like, the action stuff is great. Don't really care for the story, but maybe that'll change because I'm prone to wearing flip flops, if y'all know what I'm talking about. But the other game that I am so glad is as good as it is, partially because I drafted it in our fantasy draft thing that we're in, is Sifu, which is a really hard game. It's literally like playing Sekiro again for the first time, but with way more kung fu. And but it's fun. I'm enjoying it because when you pull off the counters and the dodges and you get the moves going right and you're knocking people out and you're like sliding over tables and then beating up a guy and throwing him through a window, and then you're sliding back across the table and knocking someone out. It's just like, this is really, really cool.
Dang.
So it's a lot of fun. It feels a little bit like a roguelike, because if you get too old, then the game ends. But
sounds
it kind of does
life.
It does kind of sound like real life, actually. You get old and you die, and that's it.
Right with each other.
But in this game, though, like you can go back to previous levels and kind of redo those things to try and get a better score and unlock things and explore. And it kind of pushes you to do that so you get better at the game. But when you do that, it resets your skill tree so you can try out different things, which I kind of like because it adds some flexibility to it. And it's just it's really, really cool. My favorite thing so far that I've done is in the first level where you go in this hallway and it is literally the hallway fight scene from Daredevil, and I'm like, that's all I need.
Whoa,
that's all I need. It's so good.
That's intense. When you were talking about just the fighting, I'm just imagining just like Jackie Chan, right? It's like a Jackie Chan movie. That's awesome.
Basically. So yeah, if you're a huge fan of like kung fu movies and stuff, and you don't mind games being really difficult, check out Sifu. But again, I do want to stress, this game is hard. It will beat you up. If you haven't played Dark Souls games like Sekiro, well, I should say, if you haven't played a game like Sekiro, or you haven't played like the Batman Arkham games on like the really hard, whatever I think it's like Arkham Knight mode or whatever, where you don't have any of the indicators showing you when you're supposed to counter, then you're going to have a hard time with this. But I think if you're patient with it and you stick with it, you'll have a good time. I know I am. So yeah. It's a lot of fun. Plus the music's really dope too. Like it just keeps escalating the further you get into the level, and then it's pretty good. I'm enjoying it.
That's cool.
I am enjoying it. But yeah, so let's go ahead and get into the topic of the show. Just a quick reminder as well, dear listeners, or if you're watching this on YouTube, to leave a rating and review of the podcast on your app of choice, or if you're watching this on YouTube, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and all that jazz. You kind of do what Josh is doing right now, just ferociously attacking his phone to subscribe and leave a review. And I don't know, maybe that's an angry review, but either way, leave us one. I'd love to read it. But let's get into the topic of the show, which is Shin Megami Tensei 5, which, as I found out when I was doing a little bit of research for this episode, this series has been around for quite a long time, dating all the way back to 1987 with the first game, Digital Devil's Story, Megami Tensei on the Famicom, which for those who don't know, that is what we would know as the NES here in the States. And as a matter of fact, this is actually the same series that gave us Persona. So if you love Persona, you have this series to thank for that.
No, it's terrible.
And with Shin Megami, do what?
No, Persona's great. What are you talking about? I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, Persona's awesome. But yeah, so with Shin Megami Tensei 5 released fairly recently, although when this episode comes out, it'll have been a couple of months, but you get the idea. On the Nintendo Switch to glowing reviews. Time for us to discuss the game's themes of false gods, worldly pursuits, and come to find out that this game, oddly enough, is not that different from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but I'll get into that a little bit later on. So, with that being said, as always, how we do these episodes, if you are a brand new listener or you're not familiar with how we do these video game themed or specific episodes, we'll have a section where we go through the development highlights. We do a little bit of our spoiler-free reviews, talk about the game a little bit, the reception and things of that nature. And then you'll hear a bunch of sirens going off. It'll feel like the world's ending, but the world's not ending, I promise. And that'll be your opportunity to pause the episode, go play the game, come back, and then continue listening to the spoiler territory. Or if you're curious about the game to begin with, and that's part of the reason why you're listening to this, and you don't really care about spoilers because you may not play the game or whatever it may be, then you can just continue listening and you'll be all right. Now, getting into a little bit of development history, a little bit of development highlights. As I mentioned earlier, this is the series that gave us Persona, which means that this game is developed by the developer studio Atlas, and it was produced by Kazuyuki Yamai. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. I hope I am. If I'm not, my apologies. But Kazuyuki also directed the previous game, Shin Megami Tensei 4. And one of their goals during this game's development was to depict and sympathize with modern issues such as unemployment, unease about retirement, terrorism and nuclear weapons, and home problems, which sounds like that's kind of what they did with Persona 5, but I digress. Now, the game is developed as a hybrid between the profound charm of Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne and the demon-raising gameplay in Shin Megami Tensei 4. Yes, you did hear me correctly. We will get into that specific theme in this episode. This game was developed using the Unreal Engine 4, which was a first for Atlas, and according to Yamai, moving to Unreal Engine 4 changed the way that they create games, as the ability to create something and immediately see it within the game world allowed them to spend more time on trial and error and coming up with ideas. So thanks to the new engine, it allowed them to just experiment, try a lot of things. And ultimately, I think because of that, it allowed them to develop a game that ultimately turned out to be really, really good mechanically speaking. The higher hardware capabilities of the Nintendo Switch meant that the demons in the game took approximately 3 times as long to develop when compared to previous Shin Megami Tensei games, because, of course, more polygons, more all that stuff. There's just a lot more stuff to deal with. Now, what's interesting about this game is that this game was first revealed in January 2017 as part of the Nintendo's unveiling of the Nintendo Switch in the form of a teaser trailer featuring a destroyed office building and a number of demons. At the time of the announcement, development had literally just started, and the game was presented as Shin Megami Tensei, brand new title.
Rolls right off the tongue, honestly.
Yes,
it rolls right off the tongue. It kind of makes me think of how, like, you have the Project Triangle strategy and Project,
yes,
was it Octopath Traveler, and those just wind up being the games. I almost wish this wound up becoming the actual title, where it's just like Shin Megami Tensei, brand new title, and it's like, okay, I would take that. So yes, that means that this game was first shown off 4 years prior to its launch in 2021. Now, let me see here. Trailer was shown during that, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, so the game was released on November 11th, 2021 in Japan, and worldwide a day later on November 12th. There is a limited edition that was made available in Japan featuring a music album, an art book, a t-shirt, and a game case. And I think there's one that gets you like a fanny pack or something. Wes, right? Is there one that gets you a fanny pack?
That's the only reason I got the special edition, let me tell you.
There you go. I mean, let's be honest. You never underestimate a good fanny pack. I'm just saying. I'm going to put that out there. You never underestimate a good fanny pack.
It's the perfect size for my Bible as well. So, I'm redeeming it some way.
There you go. There you go.
Yep. Jack Frost carrying your Bible. Hee-ho.
Jack Frost carrying your Bible. What?
There's a silhouette of one of the demons on the actual bag. Jack Frost is
because the Jack Frost one. Yeah, fair enough. As far as this game's reception, received generally favorable. Why are words so hard? Generally favorable reviews, according to Metacritic, and this game was nominated for Best Role-Playing Game at the Game Awards 2021, but lost to Tales of Arise. Is that a tragedy? I don't know, to a degree. But hey, to find out, listen to this episode and then go listen to our Tales of Arise episode and make your own decision.
Nice.
Now, the game sold let me see. The game sold at the time of this recording, and I think this is up to date, 800,000 copies of the game, which is quite a bit. I mean, in the UK, it debuted as the 9th highest selling game over there when it released. And so, I mean, this game is selling like gangbusters. I feel like it's introduced a lot of new people to the series. It's got a lot of new fans, a lot of new people coming on board. So much so to the point where Polygon praised the scale of the game's world in writing and stated that despite the performance issues, the bigger areas and new engine allow for some creatures to be truly breathtaking and terrifying. And IGN's Leanna Heifer, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, loved the Essence system, feeling that it was possible to create some absurdly powerful and specialized teams that can take on almost any challenge. And as someone who messed around with that, I can tell you, you can make some pretty OP teams, especially if you get Metatron in your party. So, with that being said,
yes,
Metatron is the best one in that game. I'm gonna put that out there.
No, I'm pretty sure Mara is actually. Mara's beastly.
Which one?
No.
Mara.
Oh,
it's just Mara. You don't have to look
Why
into
did
it.
you mention that? Oh no,
Is that the one I think it is?
it is.
Yeah,
Yes,
very
the
much
one you're
could be.
thinking.
Okay, fair
The
enough.
one-
It was like one of the first mini bosses in Persona 5, so I know exactly which one you're talking about.
OP.
So with that being said, that's some development history. But y'all, let's spend a little bit of time giving our spoiler-free impressions, spoiler-free review of the game itself. Now, I brought you both on specifically because you are both of y'all are longtime Shin Megami Tensei fans. I got in at Persona 4 Golden and then, played Persona 3 a little bit, Persona 5, and then I heard about Shin Megami Tensei, and I'm like, what is this? There's devils, there's demons. I don't want to play that. I'm a Christian. I don't play these games. And then Pastor Dewson got me hooked on Doom, opened up a whole new world to me, and I was like, oh, okay, maybe I will check this game out. Is it anything like Doom? Because I love Doom. So, well, not quite like Doom, a little bit different. But Wes, man, share with us and the listeners some of your spoiler-free impressions and reviews of the game, and really kind of what your mindset was going into this game, being a longtime fan of the series.
Well, I wouldn't say I would necessarily describe myself as like a longtime fan, because I've actually only played through 3 games to completion at this point. I've dabbled in a whole bunch of other ones, but really the only 3 that I've played are Shin Megami Tensei 4 for the 3DS, this one for the Switch, and then I actually went back and did a fan translation of Kyoyaku Megami Tensei, which is the Super Famicom remake of the original Megami Tensei for the Famicom. So it's like it kind of got it bookended right now. So I just kind of in all those different little holes there. But I mean, as far as going into the game, I expected it to be super hard because Shin Megami Tensei 4 was really hard and kicked my butt and stopped me for playing it for like almost a decade after, or however long it was released, because that's a hard game and you will die. And I expected a lot of you will die moments in this game too. And I got exactly what I thought, honestly. Now I tried to go through it in a bit of a different way because I had a very specific week where my family was not here when the game was released. And so I'm just like, well, there's absolutely no way I'm playing this game in front of my children. Not a chance. So I'm just going to park myself on the couch and order in, and I'm just going to blaze through it. So I was able to get the first ending within about 17 hours. And then after that, I progressively...
Hold up. For those who don't know, maybe because this is the part where people is spoiler free. This is a JRPG. Not only is it a JRPG, it's a hard JRPG. You got to 17 hours. It took me like over 40 to get to the ending. Are you a wizard, Wes?
I mean, that there have been rumblings about, the wizard of the past who can control time and JRPGs and such. And I can neither confirm nor deny that is me. That being said, 1, I hate grinding, and 2, I hate grinding, and 3, I hate grinding, and 4, I don't do side quests. So, I mean, when you just bust through games, and honestly, that leaves a really good difficulty curve when you do that sort of thing, and it just destroys you, honestly, inside. But I am, I guess, a sadomasochist on the inside, and that's why I play games like this that just beat me up. But that's what I did. I got the first ending in about 17 hours, went for law first, and then I decided to get the other 2 after that. And then I kind of cheated a little bit and reloaded a save file to get a different ending, which we may or may not talk about. And I was able to see basically everything within about 40 hours of playtime. Now, obviously, I didn't do a lot of quests. I didn't do a whole lot of other stuff other than what was necessary. But honestly, it was definitely my game of the year last year, and it might be like peeking into my top 5 games of all time because I just loved every second I had with it. Honestly, it is
Man.
so fun, and it plays exactly how I want a JRPG to play. Basically, I was floored. That's why I stuck with it for like so long. And I usually don't play games in like big bursts. I usually do an hour here, hour there. I did like an entire weekend on this game, and I still went back for more. And it was just crazy how much it sucked me in. But yeah, so I'll definitely go back and play some more of them. But other than that, I mean, that's pretty much my history with the entire series.
That's awesome.
Dude. That's
awesome.
Wild. Josh, what about you, man?
Yeah, my experience with the game, I'm on the other end of the spectrum in terms of time given to this game, because it was like, I think it was around 100 hours that I put in, which I don't do that very often. Those games are few. Like the last game that I played that was close to that, around 90 hours, was Persona 5. And I don't usually have that kind of time. I actually hadn't played very many video games, and then this one came out and it hooked me hard. So history with the Shin Megami Tensei series, I actually just got into the series with the previous mainline game, Shin Megami Tensei 4, but funny enough, I mean, that game was released in 2013. So there's like a huge gap of time.
Yeah.
You were talking about how Shin Megami Tensei 5 was announced at the release of the Switch in 2017. If you think about it, that was halfway in between when Shin Megami Tensei 4 was released and when 5 was released. So like halfway into it, they announced it. So I'm like all excited. Oh, this game's coming out. Except you got to wait another 4 years.
Yeah, you got to wait.
Like, is this even happening? Because the last announcement they did with Shin Megami Tensei was Shin Megami Tensei Cross Fire Emblem. That ended up being Pop Star Simulator. That I have yet to play. It might still be a good game, but it was just not what I was expecting from Shin Megami Tensei Cross Fire Emblem. Because Fire Emblem can be pretty intense at times. It's not a dark game like SMT is, but it's like you cross those two over, you think you're gonna. Anyways, I'm sorry.
You get Waifu Simulator 2.0 basically.
Basically what it is, yeah.
So anyways, I played 4, and then I've played a bunch of other ones in the series. I haven't gone back too far, at least in terms of mainline. I did play through the third entry in the series, Nocturne, even before it was re-released here recently. And then I've played some Persona games. I've played some of the spin-offs and things like that. Strange Journey on Nintendo DS. Devil Summoner Soul Hackers. I played that one on the 3DS. So I've played a bunch of these. I really like the series because I like how it's dark, but it's also deep. It's not just dark for the sake of like just to be edgy. Because there's some Western games that are dark just to be, just to like shove the gore in your face. And that's not really what these games are about. They're trying to get at deeper themes. And in order to go there, they use very dark imagery. So it's like serious from the beginning.
Yeah.
For better and for worse,
Right.
In terms of my review of the game, like I said, it really hooked me. I really enjoyed my time playing with it. I would say to a certain extent, it's a flawed masterpiece because you read reviews and they talk about the story of the game. Playing through it multiple times in order to get all of the ending. Yeah, like that's why I spent so much time with the game, is I played through it, I think 5 times because I messed up on one run and I felt so stupid. Of course, when you're at level 99, like you can run through the game in like 3 hours, 4 hours. So it's not like it was a ton of time, but it was still just like, come on. I need more like an annoyance. Come on.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so it was kind of a waste of time. But I still enjoyed it. Like this. Like I said, it really got its hooks in me. The story can be a little clunky. The way that I see it is that it makes more sense to me if they knew where everything was leading up to, and then they wrote the story after they wrote the ending. Like, this is the end of the game, and then here's how we get here. And so it feels very weird the way that it kind of all hashes out. I'd say multiple playthroughs actually help you notice things more in how they're
Mhm.
trying to build it. But I understand that criticism overall. But I did really enjoy it. Like Wes, it was definitely my game of the year from the last year, because it just really got its hooks in me. It's definitely, in my estimation, it has the highest quality of life features.
Mhm.
Shin Megami Tensei games are very difficult games, but this one gives you a lot of different options to make it easier, but then requires you to take those options because it's a hard game.
Right.
So yes, you can make an OP team if you want to, but then there's the secret boss that you need an OP team in order to stand a chance, because he will wipe you
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
So I'm done rambling. I really enjoyed the game. I understand the criticisms of it, but I really enjoy. I really like the stuff that the traversal in this game is very different than the previous iteration was in 2013 on 3DS. So it had, those between PlayStation 2, PlayStation
Mm.
3 graphics.
Yeah.
So this is a huge step up. And while sure, it chugs a little bit on Switch, the fact that it has this big, not necessarily open world, but large world with tons of things scattered everywhere, that got its hooks in me. I do the side quests, and so
Mhm.
I'm trying to knock out all these different things. My first run was 60 hours because I had to clear all the little icons because I'm a
Yep.
fill in the blank. But yeah, I just get obsessive. So
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it. There you go.
Yeah. Right on, man. Well, at this point, you're probably wondering, like, wait, what is this game even about? And I totally forgot to even really read what the kind of synopsis was. So if you go over to really like GameStop or Amazon or anything and you read the synopsis of the game, you'll see that it says experience a dark post-apocalyptic adventure and discover an alternate demon-infested Tokyo in Shin Megami Tensei 5. When a grisly murder scene in modern-day Tokyo blocks our protagonist's walk home, an unplanned detour leaves him buried and unconscious. He awakens in a new Tokyo, a wasteland ravaged by apocalypse, now called Dot? I'm probably mispronouncing it. Before bloodthirsty demons can claim his life, a savior emerges and they unite to become a mighty being, neither human nor demon, a Nahobino, which kind of just made me think of a Nephilim from the Bible, is really what it made me
Ooh.
think of. With newfound power, the protagonist ventures through Da'at, an enigmatic, it's a big word, you probably won't see that in Wordle, an enigmatic realm filled with mythical deities and demonic tyrants in constant conflict for survival. Searching for answers, the protagonist must forge his own path in a battle between light and dark to dictate the fate of the world. And with that being said, you're probably wondering, wait a minute, why are you guys playing this? And it's the same question I asked when Josh and Wes were playing, and I was like, this game's got demons in it, and you're recruiting demons into your party? Guys, what are you doing? But then I played it and was like, oh, it's not quite what the game really appears on the surface level, so I approach this game because I love Persona. I flip-flopping love Persona. Persona 4 Golden is one of my favorite JRPGs of all time. I love that game. Anytime it gets re-released somewhere, I will buy the crap out of that game. If it gets released on the Nintendo Switch, and if I somehow cause that to come into existence, because there's supposed to be a Nintendo Direct tomorrow on not November. This is not October. This is February 9th. If it happens and Persona 4 Golden drops on the Switch, you bet your taco lunch I will be buying it for the Switch. So I was like, man, I want to try out one of these games because this is what Persona came from. It's got to be good, right? And then when I was kind of looking into it, I'm like, oh, you're recruiting demons into your party. That sounds really not good. It sounds like something I wouldn't want to play. But I was like, you know what? I'm going to give this game a shot because maybe there's more to it than what I thought there was, right? You kind of have that with just a lot of different things. You know, you approach a different book or a movie or whatever, and you're like, this seems a little weird. But then when you get into it, you're like, oh, there's actually a lot more to it than what you first appear. Let me just first say this, and I teased this in the beginning. If you like the Marvel Cinematic Universe and how they've set up their pantheon of gods and characters and stuff, it's literally no different than this. And I would argue that Marvel Cinematic Universe is probably a little more, what's the word? I don't know what the correct word is, but it's a little more extreme or godless than what Shin Megami Tensei 5 is. And I'll get to that in the spoiler section, but I'll leave that teaser there for you there. That being said, as I was playing this game, I found, kind of like what Josh said, the story is a little clunky. It's a little kind of hard to follow at times, but that's kind of why I decided to do a lot of side quests. Maybe this will kind of flesh out the lore a little bit and I'll get more understanding and pay attention to the different characters and talk to them. And as I did that, I started learning more about the world, the game, and I'm like, oh, so pretty much anything and everything that isn't God in this game is a demon. So even angels in this game are technically considered demons, and humans are considered demons. I'm like, okay, now I'm starting to see where this kind of starts breaking down a little bit. And so that kind of helped me go, okay, now I can look at this through a analytical lens, a biblical lens, and see how this is really playing out. And really, that's kind of where I came to the conclusion of like, yeah, this is really no different than the Marvel Cinematic Universe, because it's the same way that they have their stuff set up with, you have your different like demons or gods or whatever. That's like Dormammu from, that was in the Doctor Strange movie. You have Mephisto. You have the multiple different dimensions. I mean, you have Ghost Rider, you have Blackheart, you have those characters, and it's really not really. I mean, you have the Asgardians who are quote unquote gods, so to speak, and it's just there's not really a difference to me when I'm looking at the two and comparing them. Like, these look like the same exact things. What does that have to do with the game? Not a whole lot. I just thought it was worth noting during this part before you get into the spoiler part. But yeah, the combat was really good. I liked it. I thought that was pretty good. I will say that even on easy, the game will punch your teeth in. And it was that's what I liked about it. Josh brought this up when he was talking about the game, where it has things in place for you to make the game easier on yourself, but that still doesn't mean it's easy. You still have to make use of the systems at play in the game and utilize those to make a well-rounded team, to take note of the weaknesses, to take note of the strengths, and really capitalize on a lot of those things, and really pay attention to the essence system and ask yourself, okay, how do I want to build my main character out? Do I want him to be more of a caster, or do I want him to be more of a support, or do I want him to be more of like a strength-based sort of thing, or a tank? You have those options available to you. So if you love job systems like in Final Fantasy, you'll love this. And so the combat was a lot of fun. I love seeking out the secret bosses. I actually bought the DLC, so I was going through and fighting the different side characters and getting those. And I was like, man, this is really cool. And what's really nice about the DLC is you can spawn those little, I forget the names of them, the Matamas, is that what they are?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It spawns a lot of, and there's so many of them after you buy it. It is stupid how many there are. But you can use that to grind out levels and get more money, so you can fuse more personas. Sorry, demons. Let's just call them personas. That's really what they are. And so you can fuse those out. You can get more things to level up your characters. So if you buy the DLC, you can make the game a complete breeze to a degree. At least until the final act of the game. It's still going to be a hard fight. So you got to make sure you have a really well-rounded team. But I will say that there were points where the subject matter was a little bit too much for me, because not because it was dark necessarily, but because I just found it kind of ridiculous. Like, it just kind of didn't make sense, because I'm like, okay, in a Christian worldview, this literally doesn't make any sense. You know, so
that's right. You took the law route. Yeah.
I did. I took the law route. Yeah.
There are some really spicy comments during the law route.
So it's just, it was interesting. And like, it got me to think, and that's where I was kind of like, this game is not quite what I thought it was for the better. And by the time I got to the end of the law route, I was like, yeah, I enjoyed my time overall. Am I going to play it again? Probably not, because I don't really want to play through it again because of how hard it was, and it just hurt me. And, but at the same time, like, I could see me probably going back through and getting the neutral ending, the chaos ending, and I'll leave it there. I won't spoil anything.
Other nondescript endings that may or may not exist.
but it was interesting, and man, some of the characters were really interesting, and I'm going to start kind of landing the plane here, but it's just, this game, and this is why I've titled this episode, Shin Megami Tensei 5 is and is not what you think it is, because there's more to this game. And I think for for us as Christians, specifically speaking to the Christian audience, for us to just look at the game and go, oh, you're recruiting demons. It's like, that's not, I mean, kind of, but not really, and not in the way that you're probably thinking. And the characters you're recruiting aren't exactly demons, because I don't know how many people would consider Thor a demon. You know what I'm saying? Or even the archangels would consider that. I mean, that's where, again, this game got you thinking, man. And if anything positive I can say out of this game, besides just it was a fun game, is it got me to like start studying like the spiritual realms of stuff from a biblical worldview. So here I was pulling like R.C. Sproul and systematic theologies and like, hey, what does the Bible really say? And it was ironic because in our small group, we were reading through Screw Tape letters. So I was like, this is just kind of oddly timed, but at the same time, it was kind of funny at the same time. So
nice.
Overall, I enjoyed the game. I did. I know some people are probably going to hear this and be like, Logan's a sinner. It's like, duh, that's why I need Jesus, as do we all. But it's just, there's more to this game than I think people... I'm just going to say there's more to this game than what people probably think there is. And so I'm going to leave it there. It's like what Josh said. It is using dark imagery. It is using some really dark themes, some pretty intense themes. But it's telling a mature story in the very truest sense of the word mature, right? You think of Call of Duty being labeled mature, and it's just like, oh, bro, like 360 no scope. Oh, just shot that dude in the face. It's just dumb stuff. It's just mature for just the shock value. This is like... This is an intellectual's M-rated game. This is a thinking man's M-rated game. So with that being said, let's get into the game. We've teased the spoiler stuff enough. Skinner's going to throw the spoiler stuff in here. You're going to drop it in there. So if you don't want this game spoiled, this is your opportunity to pause, bow out, hop on over and play the game yourself, or, I don't know, go listen to the Tales of Arise episode. And that being said, giving you enough time, enough spoiler warnings. You've already heard the sirens. Let's get into the game. Guys, Shin Megami Tensei 5. Let's just address the elephant in the room, or I guess multiple elephants in the room if you want to keep it on par with the whole
Ganesha in the room.
And all that, yeah. So this game it's arsenal or library or codex of demons, so to speak, pulls from a wide variety of world religions. One of the things I actually was really impressed with this game was during the loading screens, it would show you, it would pop up like a demon, right? And it would tell you like what its lore was in that region. If it was part of a folklore, if it was just something made up, if it was part of a religion. There's a lot of like Hindu gods in this. There's a lot of Eastern European or just European in general, like folklore and myths. You have, of course, the Asgardian stuff with Zeus and, not Zeus, Odin and Thor, and those are the ones I can remember. I'm sure there's more. Loki, thank you. I think Sif was even in there too, now that I think about it. But you have like other stuff that you would probably see of like actual demons that we in the Western world know about from biblical worldview. You have Satan, you have angels, you have all these different characters. Just pretty much all the things that if you've been to a Sunday school class, you've probably heard a lot of these names. So you probably are familiar with the Archangel Michael and all them. They're all in here. This is almost like a Super Smash Brothers of world religions, And so
that is the best explanation. I love that so much.
That? But like I was sitting there thinking about it, and I'm like, I'm learning about world religions. I'm like, you could almost use this game's loading screens as a world religions class to help just be little things. And I'm like, I wonder if anyone's done that. And I almost contacted you like, hey, did you use this in a class to teach world religion at all at any point? Because I feel like you could.
Who going along with that, yeah, I was a cross-cultural major in college. So it's like, oh, okay. Boom. Okay. World religions class. It took a bunch of those and I was like, oh, okay. Yes. I remember that. That sounds familiar. I've learned about that mythology and that.
Whoa.
So I was like, oh, okay, this is super familiar to me. And I think unfortunately, the terminology that they use, the idea of, calling every spiritual thing a demon is just because of some of that more Japanese influence being from a background of the idea of yokai. Now, if you're not familiar with the idea of yokai, it's this kind of catch-all term that the Japanese have for like these different types of spirits that maybe inhabit like different areas of the land. So like you have a tree yokai, you have a river yokai, you have different yokai that represent these things. And so if you've ever played something like Yokai Watch for the 3DS or watched any of the show, you can say that like all these different monsters, per se, these spiritual beings are in a sense yokai. And I honestly feel like that would have been a
Okay.
better translation of it, because they're not really treated in
Yeah.
the sense of like, our Western understanding of demons and angels and everything. And a better catch-all term doesn't really exist in English. So unfortunately, that's just kind of like where they're at, other than just calling like spiritual beings or whatnot. So
Yeah.
unfortunately, that's kind of where that hangup comes from. And just trying to understand it from a more Asian mindset, I think, is helpful
Mhm.
in seeing how
Yeah.
they do see these spirits in like everything, at least in their folklore.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up, because that was part of the reason why I decided to give this game a chance, because I'm like, okay, this word demon that they're using doesn't really seem like what we know from the Christian perspective or Western perspective. So I'm like, I'm going to give this game a chance, because they're probably using it in a way that is totally different than what I think it is. And lo and behold, it is, because I remember playing through it and they labeled, I can't remember which angels it were, but they labeled them as like demon kind, and I'm like, wait a minute.
Mhm.
Okay. This is what I thought it was. There's more to this than what's going on, because you wouldn't call them that, and it is what it is. So
Yeah.
it's not, that's one of the things, that's one of the reasons why I want to do this episode, is kind of help, even if people listening to this never play this game, that's fine. You play what you want, but at least gain a bit of a better understanding as to what is actually being called a demon in this game, and realize that it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense from a Western perspective. But that's why I'm glad Wes brought that up, because when you think of it from
Yeah.
that perspective and the culture it was designed in, that's where it's coming from. And so
Mhm.
when I figured that out and it just clicked in my mind, I'm like, okay, this is easier for me to play and kind of play through, and just we'll just play. I don't know why I said play 3 times, but it just made it easier to really kind of digest, because I'm like, okay, this is what it is, and
Yes.
it's not as like satanic or whatever as people may
Mhm.
think it is, because it's really not. There's definitely like demonic characters for sure. I mean,
Mhm.
heck, the game opens with Lucifer showing up saying he killed God, and now your main goal is to go kill him. And I'm like, okay, this is where we're starting off. Here we go.
Thanks,
you
Nietzsche.
know, but
What?
even with that too, when you consider that aspect, because when that came up, I was like, yeah, this is no different than like Xenoblade Chronicles. Not to spoil that game, but it's no different than like a lot of like Japanese RPGs that had this element of you're trying to take down God, so to speak, which I think is what the main thing of Final Fantasy 13 was, if I remember correctly.
Mhm.
Um, but it's
Ish. Yeah.
just
Ish.
ish. Okay, so it's kind of similar. But it's just that thing of like, you're basically trying to take down this god, be free, and free humanity. I think probably a better comparison would be Persona 5, because I think that
Yep.
is kind of
Yep.
how it is. But again, same stream of thinking there.
Right.
But so with that being said, talking about that, guys, what are some other things in dealing with this particular theme, and kind of where the culture that the game was made in? I don't know. Is there anything else that maybe we can talk about or zero in to kind of help
Well,
define this a little bit?
just a couple thoughts that I had. I think actually the term that you threw out there of folklore is probably the closest we're gonna get in kind of just the American mindset of the sense of these characters. I mean, like if Santa Claus showed up in this game, he would be considered a demon.
I was
It's
actually waiting for Santa Claus to show up.
well, I mean,
Yes.
there's the character of like King Frost. That's not quite Santa Claus, but something similar like that.
Yeah.
I mean, the chick with the golden apples as well. I believe
Oh
she's from
yeah.
Norse mythology. Kind of, it's like these characters that are jovial are still considered demons, and
Hmm.
I tried to play this game, or no, I didn't try. All my playthroughs of this game had the Japanese language on. I didn't play. I actually haven't heard the English voiceovers at all, but I was just reading
Oh.
subtitles the whole time. And they do refer to him as Akuma, which is it. It does have like a dark connotation in Japanese, so I'm like, why? Like, I don't know why they chose to use that term.
Hmm.
But I do think that idea of folklore is kind of where, again, kind of the closest thing that we have, because they pull these characters from all different kinds of places that feel folksy to me. Like when the problem is for American, I'd say people our age, anyone who has been vaguely affected by the satanic panic and things like that, where
Yeah.
like you think of like Satanism as like the occult and seances and, you know, pentagrams with what is it, a Baphomet above it where you're slitting the throat of a virgin. Sorry, we already said spoilers. Sorry, it's kind of got kind of dark there.
Or even
but I'm saying
Pokemon,
like
you know.
Pokemon, yeah, you gotta watch out for them, man.
So we think of that as like the demonic. So you say you have a game where you're summoning demons. Like
Mhm.
why would you allow that to enter into like even your mind at all?
Right.
But it's not like that's not the mindset of the creators of this game. It's that there are these characters in folklore that you can actually you have to negotiate in order for them to help you.
Mhm.
It's not, which honestly is probably a bit closer to the way that we negotiate with demonic spirits nowadays. I think of one of the demons in this game is Moloch, and you know, that's a biblical demon.
Mhm.
It's mentioned in the Bible as the, obviously it's a fake god. There is no God but the one in heaven, biblical
Mhm.
God. But that was the one that the surrounding nations would sacrifice their babies to. So
Right.
similarly, today we sacrifice our children to our careers, to our, you know, to all these
Mhm.
things. You know, I don't want to change my life, so I'm going to give up my child through abortion or other things like that. So, anyways, I'm getting a
Sorry,
little,
side note, not saying
yes,
Josh does this specifically, but just saying like
no,
our society as a whole tends to
yes,
do that. I don't want
right.
listeners going like, "Wait, does Josh? What is it? Does he
He's
neglect this?"
okay with
No,
that. No wonder he's playing this game.
no.
No,
Just wanted to
right.
make that
Yeah.
distinction.
Yes, yeah, that's just kind of the mindset that we have nowadays. Just the culture that we're in is
Mhm.
what I'm getting at. So, anyways, the way that this game I mean, they're basically kind of stand-ins for different ideas and different like cultural ideas, especially when you get into the upper kind of pantheon, the stronger quote unquote demons in the game. They
Mhm.
have these different mindsets, and so you're choosing to, as much as you're negotiating with them to join you, you're also going along with them, right? You need to convince them in the way that you see the world, the way that you want to rebuild the world based
Mhm.
on the themes of this game and things like that. So it is, you know, you said kind of a thinking man's RPG. Like that's how this is set up, is you are using these different ideas in order to
Mhm.
build a new philosophy. And like, okay, we're already past spoilers. Almost none of these endings are satisfying.
Yeah, I was gonna say I got to the law ending. And was like, was this the good ending? I don't. I mean, I kind of okay. All right, that's we're done. I guess It's like,
Hmm.
well, at least I got to kill Lucifer. That was cool.
hmm
But
hmm
I'm like, I guess that's kind of
yeah,
good. I guess, but
yeah,
I mean, that's the funny thing about it. Because at different points in the game, it presents these different ideologies to you or ways of
right.
thinking, and you have to interact with those and kind of make a decision. Like, oh man, what is that? Oh, what is the character that you fuse with to become a Nahubino? What is his name? Oh, he looks just like the director dude. Um,
Why can't I think of it?
I
After
forget his
playing the
Amagi or
name.
entire
something, or
game.
Do
Amagi? I
what?
can't remember.
Amagi, that's
I
it.
think.
Yeah. Like he'll even ask you, because I remember uh, one section specifically, partially because I kept dying and had to re-go through it multiple times. But he asked, is my existence a bad thing? And you can say, no, you're great, or yeah, you've kind of been a pain, or he'll ask you like, have I really changed your life? It's like, well, I can't say you haven't, because I mean, you've really changed things up, but you get presented with these different ideologies and you have to make these decisions where ultimately it leads up to the end of the game where you're forced to make a decision. Are you going to side
Mhm.
with the law route, so to speak, or the armies of heaven, or are you going to choose the neutral route and save Tokyo and restore it and kind of basically be neither on the side of the angels or the demons, and then you have your chaos route where you're just kind of more selfish and you're just doing your own thing, and you just kind of do what you want. And then, well, it's spoilers. Then there's another ending that's in it. I don't even know how to get to it. I know I saw it on there in the walkthrough, and I just kind of skipped past it because I was like, I just wanted to do the law ending because I'm a good Christian boy, and
just like
little did you know that's actually probably the most blasphemous out of all of the endings.
Yeah.
So it does use the law chaos neutral thing for a lot of the game, and especially for the endings, but they are very nuanced. It's not like good and evil, and so that kind of like subverts your expectations, right?
To which it did, because I was expecting something totally different than what I got.
Even in other games in the series, it leans more towards your expectation, but this one was just like, no, they wanted you to feel bad if you chose the law route. The one other thought that I had just in terms of the Pantheon and things like that is, again, if you don't like the game, don't play it. Like I'm not trying to change your if your conscience won't allow you to play this game, then don't. Okay. But I do have to bring up that the Christian imagery in this, so like the folk, you're talking about archangels, Gabriel, Michael, stuff like that. There is lots of that kind of Judeo-Christian folklore that is extra biblical, that is put into the Lilith is one of the demons as well, if you know anything about her. But all of that Christian imagery and the characters that they are pulling from are from the Gnostics. So if
I was trying to remember what it was exactly, and I can't remember what the word was. So thank you for bringing that up.
And you mentioned Persona 5. It's the same in Persona 5. So there are characters that are like borderline blasphemous. They use characters of biblical characters. I can't recall off the top of my head if they actually use the Tetragrammaton in this game. They have used it in other games in the series, and that's where it's like, I really don't like this.
Super uncomfortable.
Use the name of God. But they are referring to the Gnostic version of that, like interpretation. I'm not saying like go check out Gnosticism, but it's like a cult. It's a Christian cult, sort of like Mormonism. Like it's not Christianity. It's a cult that broke away from Christianity. That's like what the Gnostics were. The early church denounced it as heresy. They came up with all this weird stuff about how anything physical is sinful. And so you have to attain, like you want to be pure spiritual. So therefore the God that created the physical earth had to have had some sort of evil in him as well in order to do that. You see this in the character of Sophia that's in the game as well. She was the one who birthed the creator God that created the world. So anyways, all that to say is the Christian imagery in this game is Gnostic Christianity. So it's a cult. It's a cultic version of Christianity. It's not actually referencing the biblical scriptures. So unfortunately, when it does use some of the characters in the Bible, they're not altogether good like they ought to be.
Right.
They are like, they have flaws and they have faults, which is blasphemous to a Christian, right? Because it's like you're taking like a good God and saying that, like Lucifer destroyed him or whatever. Well, no, like yes and no. Like the Gnostics did that, and so this game is pulling from that. So, anyways.
Yeah, and that was kind of something else that even kind of helped me further, like just the disbelief I had playing this game, to where I'm like, this is, on one hand, I found it interesting because I'm like, okay, this is what Gnostics believed about these characters or people from the Bible. And I'm like, okay, so that kind of helps me understand what their belief system is. But at the same time, it's kind of like what R.C. Sproul said. The great thing about unorthodoxy is that it pushes you to have a better grasp of orthodoxy.
Yeah.
So you know how to distinguish between the two. And this kind of helped me do that. And that's why I started studying like more about the spiritual realm of things and what the Bible teaches. Because I'm like, oh, this is so off base, to where I'm like, this is literally just like again, Marvel Cinematic Universe stuff where I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
because I think that was one of my biggest hangups with this is I was sitting here looking at this and comparing the two. I'm like, there's no difference between the two. Marvel Cinematic Universe has their own set of gods, has their own set of demons. That's what Dormammu is in Doctor Strange. And they're going to be pulling other characters in, especially with the introduction of Moon Knight now, who gets his powers from the Egyptian god. I'm forgetting the name, but it's from an Egyptian god. So I'm like, okay, so in this game, in this Marvel Cinematic Universe, you have Egyptian gods being real and actually having power. You have Asgardians being gods with power. You have Dormammu, who's a demon. You have Ghost Rider, who's going to be coming in, who is, you know, the Rider of Hell or whatever his name is in the comics, and he gets his powers from Mephisto, who is the devil, and his son Blackheart are going to show up. So they're getting more spiritual. And then you have the Black Knight, who has a cursed sword that's going to corrupt him and turn him evil after a set amount of years of him using the sword. So here you have this Marvel Cinematic Universe that's doing the same exact thing on several different levels as Shin Megami Tensei 5, and I'm like, yeah, it's kind of weird how we look at the two and try to condemn one and then flock to the other. It's just the same thing. It's a bunch of world religions and trying to bring in all these different gods, and one just glamorizes and spruces them up a little bit and gives them bulging biceps. I'm like, ooh, he's dreamy, you know. But here it's like, no, here's this thing's ugly. This is what this is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think if anything,
Belphegor.
Yeah, I think if anything, what I came to appreciate about this game is it never really glamorized any of the evil character. Like it showed you for what it is. It never really glamorized any of that stuff, and it never really worshipped it either. It's like this is evil. Here's what it is. You know, you make your
Mm-hmm.
and I think at the end of the day, that's kind of what the game is trying to get you to do. Like you make your own decision about what you're seeing take place, and then you decide what is good and what is evil. Because ultimately, that's the choice you have to make at the end of the game.
Mm-hmm.
So, Wes, sorry, I saw you kind of put your hand up.
No, well, going along with that, I think what it really does offer, because it feels like what it offers, I think, is a very interesting look at the worldviews behind the creators of the game. And I feel like they weren't necessarily designing the game to be super popular, because this is kind of weird subject matter to be
it's very niche. Yeah.
Very niche. So niche, whatever it is. I don't know.
Whatever the word is.
Maybe very niche for sure.
Niche.
But like just looking at like the worldview that they're presenting and just like super clashing ideals and whatnot, you really get to see the sense of hopelessness. And going back to what we were talking about with the endings, like all of these endings, they offer some really interesting ideas, but they are ultimately all hopeless. There's nothing redeeming about it. It's going to, wherever you go with it, it's just going to be empty and hollow. And I think that really does represent like the reality of a lot of the worldviews that they're putting out there. And especially coming from like a Japanese background where, you know, they have a lot of crazy stuff in their history, especially recent history, that's just created this really hopeless outlook. Like it's obviously not Christian. And I think looking at it from a Christian perspective, we can gain an appreciation for like, this is the type of worldview that they're really like pondering on. It's like, this is what they're facing in the future. That's sad. And I think as Christians, that actually helps to inform us a lot better about, okay, this is what they're thinking. Where can I go from here?
Yeah. And I think for me, that was kind of what was so interesting about playing this game. I'm like, hey, I'm approaching this like my worldview is Christian, obviously. Obviously Reformed Christian, which is a surprise to people who start following me on Twitter. Like, you like Reformed theology? It's like, dude, did you see the podcast name? But it's like, you know, you like I said, you're presented with these themes and you're forced to really kind of discern for yourself what is good, what is bad, and then go from there. And at the same time, it gives you a better understanding of the people making it, because there's people who, you know, your beliefs, your worldview is going to be different from theirs. And so now you're clashing with the two. And in a way, you're trying to figure out and dissect and break down, what does this all mean? You know? And so I think you even see this with the characters too, which is what I liked about the writing, because you see specifically with Abdiel, and maybe it's different in the other ones, but like you really see her conflict and struggle with her ideals of trying to adhere to the laws of Bethel, which is the name that they give for the laws or the heavenly forces, to where she winds up becoming a fallen angel, so to speak, even though she just dies later on. I'm like, so was it really worth you doing that to get more powerful, even though you still got destroyed in the, like? But I think that highlights something in this game that
Yeah.
you know, you kind of have to be careful what you ask for, and you kind of have to be careful with what it is you're actually chasing after, because I feel like Abigail didn't need to make that decision, and she could have just teamed up with the main character and probably still could have adhered to it adhered to her laws at the same time. But it also highlighted how the laws of the world didn't really make sense to begin with. Because I feel like that's where I think her character really highlights kind of the flaws with the way that the laws that are presented in this game are. Yeah, I don't know if did I say that right? I don't know. I just feel like she really was a good contrast to how the laws presented, or at least the you know the laws in like the law order of the game just didn't make sense. And
right.
At the end of the day, it led to her being destroyed.
Right.
And so I don't know. I remember talking about that, and I think Josh, we talked about this at one point. I think you brought that up at one point about following false gods or something. So I didn't know if you want to pick up there and kind of run with it.
Well, in that you know, that particular character Abdiel, and then even the human character Dazai, who goes, you know, full law as well. The it's like the things that they talk about. So Dazai was basically this burnout kid who like he's weak. He doesn't know how to just have that strength of character to actually hold to his convictions. He doesn't know how to, you know, act in this new world where like there's all these strong demons around him. He's like going to die. And so like even, okay, you see in Abdiel that she wants to hold on to hope and to faith that God, oh, well, it looks like he's gone, but he's actually in control and he's going to show up and he's going to like make all these things right. So we just need to hold to his laws. So much so that she actually inverts it and agrees with Chaos that we need as much power as we can in order to hold the line, kind of a thing. Because that's the Chaos ideal, is like, hey, the strongest are going to win, so let's just fight it out, kind of a thing. And so Abdiel kind of agrees with that in the end. Like, I will take this forbidden power in order to hold the line of law, which is, yes, it's self-contradictory. But Dazai really struck me because he goes full bore in like, you know what? I can't do this. Like, I'm not strong enough. I need to rely on the law in the God character, which again is dead in this game.
Right.
Which, if he were to put his trust and his faith in the true God of the Bible, it's true. Yes. Because he's not dead, right? Because he has like shown us time and time again, you know, he's revealed himself through the scriptures. He's revealed himself through his son. You know, Hebrews talks about in these last days how Jesus is the full like revelation of the character of God. So we see who God is in Jesus. Like, he resurrected, you know, he came back from the dead. I'm going to believe that guy. So like the true, if Dazai like really put his trust in the true God, then his way is correct. But instead he gives himself over fully to a false God who is not a God, who's actually dead, right? Who was conquered by the Lucifer character in this game. And so you see, it's like a tragedy, because yes, he becomes powerful. Yeah, he becomes strong. He's like, my strength isn't in and of myself. Like, my confidence isn't in and of myself, which again, those are like Christian virtues if they're placed in the true God, but it's not a true God in this game. So it's kind of frustrating because like, I totally get if as a Christian, you're just like, oh, this again, it's like borderline blasphemy. Like, it's true. Like, how are you making this guy like a bad guy? Well, it's because he's worshiping a false God. Right. And that's what we tend to do as humans. So yeah, that law route, again, I think it makes you feel bad. Because they kind of like just go down the drain, because as soon as they go against their own ideals, they fall, you know, they just they lose. And the other endings as well kind of play on similar themes of, you know, Dark Souls games, they end with this cycle, and you don't get satisfaction either. In these games, I think it goes like a bit deeper because it uses these themes of gods and angels and like just these warring factions in this realm that's unseen, right?
Mhm.
The whole theme of the game is like Tokyo has actually been destroyed for quite a while, but the god characters last dying act was to create this facade of Tokyo for humans to live
Mhm.
in. So it's actually been this desolate wasteland for a while. You just demons haven't broken in until now, kind of
Right.
a thing. And so that's a whole like cool theme in and of itself. But chaos route is like, yeah, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, basically. And it says it. This game is really interesting because it says it in a way that is very enticing.
Hmm.
The characters that actually that stand for the chaos route are very intelligent. They look upstanding. Like
Mhm.
they look like good characters. Like they can convince you like, oh yeah, that's actually probably a good idea.
Mhm.
To say like we should just fight it out because then we'll like get rid of the dross and just leave like the best people here, which is
Mhm.
kind of scary.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. They do kind of try to trick you about who actually represents which path, because it's like obviously you
Yes.
look at Dazai, he's got this dishevel, he's kind of a loudmouth, he's very similar to like Ryuji
Mhm.
from Persona 5. So you're like, well, he's probably
Yes.
chaos. And then this other kid, he's like super prim
Yeah.
and proper. He's got cool glasses. Obviously, he's the
Top
Lara.
of the class. Like, yeah.
Mhm. But they
Yes.
like totally are
Exactly.
like, oh no, we're gonna go a completely different route, and it actually works. It actually works.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And so I did neutral route first, and the neutral ending was, oh my gosh, it was very unsatisfying for me because of its implications. Basically, in the neutral route,
Sorry,
you
real quick.
yes,
On the neutral route, who is it that you side with? Is that Nuwa and that guy
yes,
or okay.
yes, mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah,
Snake
Okay, so
waifu, basically.
Snake Waifu,
right.
yeah.
Yeah, which even that character, he's like, I hate demons because, well, and you find out they like murdered his family. So, okay,
Right.
you hate demons. Cool. I understand. But you've teamed up with the demon. So, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anime.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. But in that route, you become like the creator, or not creator, excuse me, you're not creating anything, but you become the all powerful being and
Mhm.
you decide, just let them do what they want. You walk away. You say everything, that there's not going to be an all powerful rule and all powerful law. You just walk away from it
Yeah.
all. And I was just like, that is scary. Like
Yeah.
that's horrifying.
And what's
That-
even scarier about that is like there are people who think that's exactly what God's like. That God
right.
created stuff and then
Yeah.
walked away. Has nothing to do with us. And that's terrifying.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's nihilism is what
Yeah.
it's like there is no meaning. There's nothing. And the final secret ending kind of does give a silver lining to that. He doesn't walk away. It's still similar in its implications, but he stays instead of walking away.
Mhm.
Okay.
So they fake
Anyways.
you out. He puts on a pair of flip flops and is like, "Nah, I'll stay."
I mean, basically, it's like I'm in the shadows. I'll still kind of make sure things are okay here.
Mhm.
Everyone's as comfortable as possible.
So what exactly happens in the chaos route then? Is that the one where like you get rid of all the other gods, or like what? I can't remember exactly how that one pans out because I didn't get it, but you guys did. So maybe you can shed some light to it.
It's not getting rid of the other gods. It's saying like everything is fair game.
Gotcha.
When they have that meeting and everyone shares their opposing all the pantheon, Zeus and
Mhm.
gosh, I can't remember the
I can't
Egyptian.
remember their names either.
Mhm.
But yeah, I
But
remember Zeus and Odin being there.
It's basically
yes,
just pure pluralism as it comes to this
Mhm.
like
yep.
deity pantheon. It's just like
Mhm.
everything's here. Okay, we're all in, like the Smash Brothers, exactly.
It's the Smash
Yes.
Brothers of world religions. Yeah.
Yes, and the Earth is the final destination, right? It's like this is the battlefield on which you will decide, like whoever's the most powerful, have at it, kind of a thing. So,
Fair enough. Wes, man, you've been kind of quiet. What are some of your thoughts on this particular topic, or maybe taking us in a different direction?
I mean, I completely agree with you. It's just a very interesting set of endings, honestly, and they're all, like I said, they're basically all senseless. They don't matter in the end. It's just
Yeah.
like, well, yep, this is a bummer. Everything's a bummer. It's very nihilistic, I think. Not
Yeah.
necessarily like, Persona 5, because at least there's like a little bit of hope there by the end. There's a little bit
Yeah,
of
because
something going on. But
you go to the beach with your friends at the end, and the world's saved. It's like, oh, okay,
exactly.
yay, beach party.
So I think calling it like more of a thinking man's game, it sounds a little bit pretentious, but it really is. It's just like, not
Yeah.
everything's all roses and rainbows and, shooting Satan in the face with a gun or anything like that. You gotta deal with your consequences. You really do. And it's like, hey, this shows consequences. This is like, this is what's going to happen. This seems very
Yeah.
logical in this type of environment that we're setting up for this to happen. And I can
Yeah.
appreciate that. And that's why I think I really enjoyed it for what it was, because it very much emulates a lot of that, more Asian storytelling. It's a little bit more abstract. Things aren't necessarily
Right.
like clearly cut out. Like, anybody who's seen Evangelion knows about, abstract storytelling for sure. So
Speaking my love language there, man, I love Evangelion.
exactly. So it's like, I can understand it a little bit better with some of my background. And I feel like that's why it didn't leave me necessarily unsatisfied or unfulfilled. I'm like, that makes sense. This logically flows. I'm okay with that because it's setting up this paradigm that you're playing in a little bit. And it's just like, let's see what happens. Let's see what the natural consequences are. And I find that interesting. It's not consistent. It's completely ridiculous and batty and off the wall. But it has that charm to it that's just like, okay, let's explore this and look at this seriously. And that's why I think I like it so much.
Yeah. That's really what I walked away really liking a lot about the game, is that, I call it a thinking man's M-rated game. And I know that sounds pretentious, but it is. It really gets you to think about and consider some of these philosophies, and maybe even get you to consider how your own actions really play out. Like, is the stuff that you do actually good in real life? Is the stuff you actually do, could it be actually more bad than what you may think? And that's what I really found fascinating about this game, is it got you to examine those things about yourself and then make that decision in the game, ultimately leading you to the final destination of, or the final realization of, if you were given the power to recreate the world, it would still suck.
Yes.
And I'm like,
yeah.
And that's what I because again, I didn't get the other endings. I don't know if I'll play through it again. I might, just because my team was kind of OP by the end of the game. But I was sitting there thinking about it, and I'm like, okay, if I could, and this is why I love Death Note too, because it gets you to think about those things. If you had the power to kind of exact justice, right, and define what that is, what would it look like? And oh crap, that just made me appreciate this game a little bit more now. Anyway, if you can link it to like two of my favorite anime, Death Note and Evangelion, I'm totally there. But it got me thinking, like, man, what would the world look like if I had the power to recreate it? What would it look like? And I'm like, I could almost guarantee I would try to make it as perfect as possible, and there would still be things that would get screwed up, because there's no way to think through every little iota of existence and order to make it perfect. And I'm not trying to say that the world currently as it is perfect. It's not. There's a lot of issues. But it just kind of made me more grateful at the fact that, as a Christian, that I know a God of order that created the world, and there's a lot of evil in the world. I can totally admit that. But the world could be a lot more bad than what it is currently, and God's spirit is still somehow restraining all of this. And it just, I don't know, it just made me appreciate God and his creation and just who he is as a being even more after playing this game. Because I'm like, man, the way that they depict like law, just everything in this game sucks, And so it just, I don't know, man, it just made me glad that the Gnostic view of God is false. It made me glad that a lot of these other world religions are false. And it just, I don't know. I walked away appreciating the Bible more and my faith more after playing this game, because I'm just like, this is literally what hell on earth could be like. It's the same. it's the same mindset I get in after I play Doom, where I'm like, okay, this is stuff that's probably going on to a degree in the unseen realm. You know, I don't know if the Doom Slayer's going through there with metal music and just ripping and tearing demons, but
lots of
BFG,
shotguns.
you know,
man.
Lots of shotguns.
this pulling out the shotguns, you know, the double
Rip
barrel,
and
and just
tear.
like boom, you know. But it made me appreciate just like how in control God actually is.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know. It's probably weird to say that about this game specifically, but it's the same mindset I had about Doom. I'm like, okay, this gives me an idea of different spiritual beings that are out there, different philosophies
Mhm.
that are out there. I understand them a little bit better having played this game. And it's gotten me to ask some really good self-reflective questions. And at the end of
Yeah.
the day, it's like, yeah, no, this is not good. If you were to give me the reins to recreate the world, I would not want it, because I would
Mhm.
surely screw it up. You know, all that to say,
Yeah.
is that a glowing recommendation to play this game? Not exactly. You know, it's like what Josh has said about this, and Wes as well. Is just this is a, and we might start landing the plane here. I know there's more we could discuss, but I think we've covered the philosophical route a good deal here. But I lost my train of thought. So while I try to get that, guys, do you have any closing thoughts about this game specifically? Wes, kicking it over to you, kind of going from there.
I think we've wrapped it up really nicely. If it bothers your conscience, definitely don't even try it. Stay away from it. If the
Yeah.
subject matter could bother you in any way, shape, or form, we're saying
Mhm.
it's interesting, but it's not for everybody. And I think that
Right.
holds pretty true for a lot of different games that we're seeing, especially this day and age, coming out with so many crazy different worldviews that we may or may not agree with. And I think just use wisdom, think about what you can handle and do what you're able to do. But I think it's fun. A lot of people think it's fun. So if you have any curiosity, maybe pick it up, take a look at the reviews first, and don't look up any pictures of Mara.
Definitely don't look up any pictures of Mara. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Josh, what about you, man? Any
Yeah.
closing thoughts or anything you want to touch on before we start landing the plane?
Well, I think what you were saying, this is a Christian term. I'd echo that. Just how this game, on the one hand, you take a look at these other pantheons, these other like options of worship for humanity, and they're all flawed. They're all like they all have some major issues. And it's like you don't want to worship that. And so this game, like the theme of it is you are the one who's able to recreate the world. Like you become the ultimate kind of deity over everything. And it's completely unsatisfying. Like it's terrible. Like the way that even with the best intentions, you're creating, you're making, you are a horrible god.
Yeah.
And it shows, like, if you really got everything that you wanted, like it would be worthless. It would be terrible, both for yourself and for the rest of the world. And so I think, as you mentioned, like you flip that around, and as a Christian, I see that and I just go like, wow, how much more amazing is God, that he is all powerful, he is just, and he is loving, and he is like, he sacrificed for a sinner like me. Like all these, it blows my mind to think
Yeah.
of how good our God is, and how strong and powerful he is, and how he can even work through the sin of this world, right? Like you say, you look around in the world, you see all the sinful things that are happening, but there's purpose in that I don't understand right now, but that God is working through. It magnifies, not that it like makes God any better, but it shows me like, oh, it could have been with anyone else, with any other kind of deity, it would be absolute, like you mentioned, hell on earth. But
Yeah.
God, like, it shows me how good God is. It gives me a different perspective.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, he actually is altogether good in all of his ways, like the psalmist says. So
yeah, right on, man. Well, I don't have much to add beyond that. It's kind of the same thing as far as like, do I recommend this game? Because we always cover that on these episodes. And man, it's like, I'm of the opinion with just about every game now. It's like, play it if you want. I personally don't care. You know, it's like you don't have
Yeah.
to answer to me at the end of the day. But if you play the game and it really does bother you, just don't play it. You don't need to play it. It's kind of like my same opinion of Dark
Yeah.
Souls. You don't need to play it to still be a Christian. You don't need to play it to be a gamer. It's if you don't like it, don't play it. But I do think this game surprised me on the intellectual level, and that's where it really engaged me, because apart from I think one fun way to refer to this game is to call it Super Smash Brothers World Religions Edition. At the same time, you could also just call it as what is it worth for man to gain the whole world and lose his soul in the process, because that's kind of what the whole process of the game is, from the sounding of the other endings, regardless of the ending. And you see it with all the other characters too. They just pursue their own thing. And I think at the end of the day, none of them are really seeking after God. So maybe Romans 3 is a better comparison for this game. But in case you're new to the show and you're like, man, they really delve deep into the philosophy of this, that's what we do on some of these episodes, man, especially with Shin Megami Tensei, because this game, like I said, we've said this multiple times, it is a thinking man's M-rated game. It is deep. And so that's just what we do on the show. We like to analyze worldviews. We like to analyze philosophies of games, the stories and things of that nature. And we've done it with other stuff such as BioShock, God of War, Uncharted 4, those other games. So feel free to check those out as well. And it's just also at the same time, I'm like, I want to really make this clear on this episode for some of our listeners who are definitely more Christian, who probably are going to be really upset that we talked about this game specifically. My hope in doing this episode I want to hit a couple aspects. One is to give people a better understanding of what this game actually is and the terminology it uses, because I really think it borderlines on the, edgy teenager who thinks shopping at Hot Topic is super cool and then calling things a certain way is super cool, because it kind of comes off that way where it's like, okay, you guys, come on, really? But at the same time, it's like you have all these other outlets, these secular outlets from a non-Christian worldview talking about this game. Where's the Christian worldview on this game? Where's the Christian worldview voice on this game? It's here. So if we can add to that, I'm glad we did it. Mission accomplished. That's what I want to do. My goal in doing this episode isn't to get people to play this game. If you do want to play it, go for it, and hopefully you can enjoy and engage in the conversation on that. But it's not to get you to play it. It's just to help people understand this game better and understand the fact that in more ways than one, this game represents probably several different things that your neighbor believes. And you could probably use this to help you understand that a little bit better and use it as a tool for the gospel. And if possible, and if that's what happens, dope. If not, and you just walk away with a new JRPG that you really dig, I mean, hey, that's fine too. But my main thing is just I wanted to go into this to be, the Christian side, the Christian voice talking about this game, lending our worldview into it, shedding some light on it, and exposing some of the issues and discussing it in a mature way. And just, I think we accomplished that. And if people still get mad for us talking about it, well, you can send all your hate mail to, you can send it to our email, reformgamers@gmail.com. I don't care. Bring it on. Like I said, being a high school teacher, I'm just like, I've lost all sorts of like filter and patience. I'm just like, bring it on. I just don't care. It's whatever. Not to be flippant, but it's just, I think as Christians, I'm getting on a soapbox, so I'll end it here. But I think as Christians, we owe it to not only ourselves, but to the world around us to examine the things in our world, the things that are popular, and speak to them from a Christian worldview, much like what Paul did in the Areopagus, and say, hey, you guys have this statue out there that says dedicated to the unknown God. Well, I know who that is, and let me tell you about him. And I think with this game here, it's another way that we can just understand our world a little bit better and use that for the gospel. And if that's what we wind up doing, awesome. If you wind up playing the game and enjoying it and you just use it for leisure, that's fine too. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I don't really care if you play this game. It's up to you. But again, if you play it and you realize, man, I don't really like the themes, it's too dark, that's fine. Go play something else. I don't think any lesser of you. So that's where I wanted to land. I wanted to highlight and make that known because I know some people are really going to be upset that we're talking about this game. And it's just, if the world is the only people talking about it and there's no Christian side of things, I think we're missing out on something. And so that's part of the reason why the Reformed Gamers was even started in the first place, was to talk about these games from a Christian perspective, because it doesn't seem like a lot of other people are. So Now I put that out there. It's on the internet, and I'm sure I'm going to get at least one really angry letter from a mom who's like, "You told my kid to play Shin Megami Tensei 5." I'm like, "No, I didn't." But it is what it is. So, So with that being said, that's our discussion on Shin Megami Tensei 5. If you have thoughts or questions or things like that, feel free to drop it in the comments on YouTube. If you're in the Discord server, you can drop it into the feedback section. You can drop it in the general chat. You can even drop it in the theology discussion because it kind of ties into that too. So feel free to continue the conversation with us over on those avenues. But with that being said, this is episode 211. This is the second episode of February, which means it's time for the patron thank you of the show. What we do is we thank our patrons every month for supporting us through that specific month and helping us continue to keep the lights on, keep the controllers charged, and continuing to encourage my addictive habit of getting platinum trophies. Although I'm kind of cooled off on that in my old age, which is what it is. Not enough time to do that. But those patrons that we want to thank are Alex Castellanos, Brandon, brother, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your last name, but Brandon Bueno Corsi? Correct me if I'm wrong. Let me know on Patreon. Cassie, Chris Freeman, Christopher Commander, Dale Tavares, David Henderson, David Matthews, Derek Smith, Jake Walker, Jeff Jackson Jr., Jimmy Changa, Jonathan Harrison. I know that guy. We've had him on the show. Josh Broccolo. We've also had him on the show before.
Hey-o.
It's like the Avengers. Kiefer Winborn, Kokoro Daki, Luke Strain, Mark Kozlowski, Matt Edwards, Matthew White Chocolate McDougall, Matthew Millsap, Melvin Benson V, Micah Hendrick, Michael Toller, Mr. Butts, Nate McKeever, Paige Penson, Retro Rewind Podcast, Ryan1701E, Sam White, Savone Pena, Third Strongest Mole, Travis, Vincent Yu, Weatherman Keefe, Wesley Ray. Name also sounds familiar. Man, I feel like he's on the show right now.
What a hack.
And Xavier, it's a hack. And Xavier Medina, y'all, thank you so much for continuing to support us over on Patreon and allowing us at TRG to continue doing what we do.
I just want to say, if Jimmy Changa, if that's your real name, Jimmy Changa, that's beautiful.
It's pretty awesome, right?
Beautiful
your parents,
human being,
well
Jimmy
done.
Changa.
Pretty awesome. It's pretty awesome. With that being said, before I let y'all go, guys, I want to thank you all again for joining me on this episode and helping me unpack this game because, boy, is it a meaty game. I feel like you could take a world religions course in college or like a philosophy 101 class just from playing this game and thinking through it. So I appreciate y'all coming on. But before I let y'all go, some recos, things for our dear listeners to check out this week. Links, again, will be in your show notes. Josh, dude, what should people check out this week apart from the Backlog Breakdown podcast? Obviously.
Hey, thank you.
Yeah, man.
So we just talked about an M-rated game for multiple reasons. We didn't even go into all the reasons why it's rated M. I do think there are reasons behind some of the more adult material within the game as well. We didn't go into that. After talking about that, let's talk about something a little bit more wholesome. One recommendation that I have, you mentioned, Logan, how you really like Death Note. The creators of Death Note, the people who both the artist behind it and the writer behind it, their next manga, which was adapted into an anime, is called Bakuman, and it is a anime manga. I watched the anime. I didn't read the manga. About mangaka, so the people who make it's an anime about people who make manga. And it is a very wholesome story. It goes through the years from middle school up until these characters like fighting and struggling to be like decent producers of these Japanese comic books. And it's so good. My co-host Nate has watched through it as well, and we had some conversations about it. And even just talking with him, I'm like, oh man, it really was that good. It wasn't just me. Because it's kind of a slice of life anime, which I'm not usually into all the time.
Yeah,
but this one's good. It's got some great characters, so check out Bakuman. If you're into anime, manga, that kind of thing.
Don't get that mixed up with Bakugan. Don't do that.
No, it's not Bakugan. Yeah. Bakugan is the what is that? The yo-yo manga, whatever.
Yes.
I thought that was Beyblades. Is there another one?
Something like that.
Basically the same thing.
Dude, so side note, like some of my students in my robotics class like turn the gears for the robots into tops and like, look, Logan, it's Beyblades. I'm like, you guys are nerds, but I love it. This is so cool. By the way, Josh, to answer your question in the show notes, yes, that does say Mr. Butts.
Yeah.
It's one of the best ones to say each
like,
month. So it's always a good time. Wes, man, what are some recos that our listeners should check out?
Oh, it's like anime hour going on here because I also have an anime to check out. The latest Digimon season. I'm not talking about Ultraman for once. The latest Digimon season, however, is quite good. I've been watching the first few episodes. It's called Digimon Ghost Game. It's only subbed right now. There's no dub yet available for that.
Okay.
But it almost does have kind of like a Persona E Shin Megami Tensei vibe to it because it's more of a horror Digimon anime, designed for maybe a little bit older kids actually. And I was actually shocked by some of the subject matter. I'm like, oh boy, this is getting a little bit spooky. I think I would definitely be a little bit, creeped out by this as a kid. So definitely check it out. I don't know where it's going necessarily, but they are taking some of the stuff from the original Digimon season, Digimon Adventure, and kind of like making it a little bit more modern. And they might even have some characters showing up at some point. I've been hearing some rumors. So, if you want to see some crossover from that, and I'm really trying hard not to laugh because of the show notes right now. So Digimon, go for it.
Oh man, it's always a good time to have a live document for the show notes. It is what it is. Well, to keep on with the theme, I actually took this off my recos, but I'm gonna go ahead and put it back on there anyway. I recoed this, I think, in the last episode with Jonathan. Just to keep with the whole anime hour thing, I've been getting back into anime, which has been really nice, mainly because of Attack on Titan, but because like you only get one new episode a week, it's like I need something else to watch, man. This is killing me with these cliffhanger endings that they're known for. And so I would recommend one that I've been getting into, which is Demon Slayer. I know I'm kind of behind on that one, but that seems to be a fan favorite within the Discord. I feel like every time I go over to the What You Watching channel, that's literally all they're talking about next to the Book of Boba Fett. And so, Demon Slayer's dope. The opening theme song is dope. Don't you dare skip the opening theme song if you watch it, though. It is a banger. It is so good. It's one of those songs where, like, if you go work out in the gym, this would power your workout. It's so good.
Oh, nice.
It's so good. Actually, so is the new opening theme song for the last season of Attack on Titan, because it's just metal. And I'm like, I remember, sorry, a side thing again, I'm getting distracted easily because we're getting close to the end of the recording. I remember like telling my wife, hey, let's watch Attack on Titan. Just to warn you, though, I watched the first 2 episodes already that are out, and the opening theme song, you're not going to like it. And she's like, why would I not like it? And it literally starts with like, ooh, and I'm like, yes, metal. And she's like, I didn't know they would that I didn't know Japan produced that kind of music. I'm like, let me introduce you to that side of things. And she's like, no, I'm good. So anyway, all I have to say, Demon Slayer's dope. It's a really good anime. The art is just insanely good. It is, I don't know. The art's just nuts. The art's really, really good. But yeah, there's that. I would also like to reco a Minecraft Spotify playlist that I will link to in your show notes, because I was sitting there in robotics today and they're just working on the robots. I'm like, okay, guys, what's your music preference? And one kid looked up and looked at me and goes, can we listen to Minecraft music? And I just stopped and I was like, hold up. Are you messing with me right now? Because if you are, I'm going to dial back my excitement. He's like, no, I'm serious. Can you find a Minecraft soundtrack playlist? And all the other kids were like, yeah, that sounds really awesome right now. So we listened to the Minecraft music all first hour where they were building robots. And I'm like, this is actually super chill. I like this. So
nice.
Minecraft Spotify playlist will be in your show notes. Enjoy that. The other thing I also recommend is a new book by Reagan Rose. He does a podcast about productivity and Christianity. And this book is called A Student's Guide to Gaming. And it is the kind of balanced book I want from a Christian worldview. And it is great. And I don't want to say that, like, I don't want people to think that when I say it's the balanced book that I want, that it doesn't ask hard questions, because it does. And it's really good. It's really thoughtful. If you work at a church, if you're a parent and you have kids and you want to think through this stuff biblically, awesome resource. And it's only like 100 and some odd pages. So it's a super short read too. So words are hard. Sweet. But yeah, so links to all that stuff will be in your show notes. Yeah. and enjoy that stuff. But with that being said, guys, again, thank you for joining me on this episode of the podcast. Nearly 2 hours discussing Shin Megami Tensei 5, which is about what I expected because it's a beefy game. So, but yeah. So with that being said, dear listeners, if you want to support TRG and what we do here on the podcast, maybe throw a couple bucks our way as a tip, or just, help us to keep doing, or maybe get some new games to talk about on this show specifically, you can support us over on Patreon. It gets you early uncut access to all of our episodes, behind the scenes, and more. So be sure to go over to patreon.com to check out how you can support. But if you can't support financially, totally understand. Maybe you can support it a variety of different ways. You can support us by subscribing to the YouTube channel, hitting the like button on the videos, sharing the videos is a huge one. Sharing the podcast episodes is another huge one as well. The algorithm does a pretty good job of dispersing our videos on YouTube, but again, sharing it does an exponential job, it does a better job. You can also go to our website, thereformedgamers.com, where actually Wes writes the retrospective series for that. So you can check out his stuff over there, as well as news, reviews, and things like that are all over there with links to everything TRG related. So our Twitter account's on there, our Facebook page is on there, our Facebook group is on there, our Discord is on there. At least it should be by the time that this episode releases. If it isn't, someone needs to message me and be like, Logan, you're slacking. But yeah, you can also join our Discord server as well. Links to everything will be in your show notes, and we'd love to connect with you and discuss some games there and get you part of the community. But with that being said, be a deer, keep it locked here, and we'll see you in the next episode.